So welcome to Education in Emergencies and Initiatives for Refugees. I'm so excited about this topic and about our panelists, and really grateful to have them here as well as you all in the audience. So we're celebrating International Education Week at AFS, and it's just a really nice opportunity to honor the work that we're all doing in this space and to learn from each other and have that learning be something that we're always striving for. So it's an honor to host this session. My name is Saskia Kaya. I'm the program manager at AFS Intercultural Programs, and I am dialing in from Istanbul, Turkey. So for those of you in similar time zone, have a good early evening to you all. This is a really important topic, and it's something that I feel very strongly about, and something that I think there could always be more discussion around. So thank you all for having me and for being here. So we have a very amazing panel here. We have Morselina Amin from Girls Toward Leadership. She's representing her organization as the founder and president. We have Katie Noble from Teach for All. She's the head of education in emergencies. And we have Sean Riley from AFS Intercultural Programs. And Sean is the director of program development. And so millions of youth worldwide face disruptions to their education due to climate change, natural disasters, displacement, or other emergencies. And these crises create unique challenges for accessing safe, inclusive, and quality education. So our discussion with this panel today will highlight innovative strategies and efforts to ensure continued access to education for young people in crisis situations. This will be our agenda. We'll start by understanding the impact of crises on education and how organizations respond to that. So how does Teach for All respond? How does Girls Toward Leadership respond? And Sean will also share a little bit about how AFS has responded in these contexts. And then we'll end with building how we can build sustainable and scalable solutions, and we'll save time at the end for audience Q&A. So we'll monitor your questions and save time at the end for addressing any themes that might arise and answering your questions towards the end of the session. So before we do that, we have a little exercise. So in times of crisis, alongside solutions for education, we have to also acknowledge that the trauma of these situations and how that could also limit access to education when people just aren't feeling at home or safe in their own bodies. So investing in students and educator well-being is necessary for creating healing spaces. So I'd like to offer you a mindfulness practice. And this is one tool to address trauma through things like cognitive behavioral practices, naming emotions, disrupting negative thought patterns, and even physical practices like mindful breathing, yoga, things like that. So I'd like for us all to just take a moment to close our eyes. And if that is uncomfortable for you, I would just say take your vision away from the screen. So you can look down, you can look somewhere in your space, and just take a deep breath. And start there. Maybe feel your feet on the ground, feel your seat in your chair. And we're going to do an exercise called 5-3-1-1. So 5 represents 5 deep breaths. So take a deep breath in through your nose and let it go out from your mouth. And you'll do 4 more breaths like that. And please begin filling up from the bottom of your belly all the way up to your shoulders when you breathe in. And breathe out to let it go. Even one deep breath begins to alkalize our bodies, inviting an internal state of calm and balance, nourishing our cells. So come to your fifth breath, into the nose, out through the mouth. And number 3 stands for 3 things you're grateful for, large or small. It can be that you have running water. It can be that you have 10 fingers and 10 toes. It can be something very simple. It could be that you have a place to sit comfortably right now. And hold these things in your mind, these 3 things. And if it were possible for you to feel a real gratitude, like deep in your bones, what would that feel like in your body? What would it be like if you could celebrate these 3 things right now? And then 1. So we did 5 and 3. We've come to the first one. That's a serotonin brain hack that is not about how it looks, but how it feels on the inside. So you're just going to turn the corners of your mouth up towards your ears and smile. And it might feel fake and weird and uncomfortable. Don't worry, nobody can see you. They just see us, the speakers. So just try it and see what happens inside of your mind. Try to hold the smile for 10 seconds. Doesn't matter how you look. Focus on how it feels. Watch what happens in your mind. Maybe close your eyes and feel the smile. And the last one is one aspiration for your day or for this moment or for this session, one quality of mind and of heart that you want to bring to your life today. And declare that for yourself and commit to it. And even if you don't manage to make it happen, at least you've committed to something good and you won't regret having made that commitment. All right. And you can open your eyes. So this practice is called, as you can see on the screen, 5311. This is something that is wonderful to do first thing in the morning. Before you check the news, before you check social media, before you even talk to another human being. It's a way for you to take responsibility for your own well-being and create a positive imprint in your mind before anyone else can, regardless of your circumstances. And so when we create these intentional moments of pause and reflection through the day, we will be much more effective at bringing about a compassionate society, a compassionate workplace, and compassionate lifestyle, and just a response that will feed your well-being before you engage with anything else in life. And this is something we use in our facilitated dialogue sessions with participants. Because we talk about heavy topics with them, like we will talk about today. And so when we ask them, what are the problems in your communities? What problems do you want to solve? Sometimes anger comes up, frustration, hopelessness. And so this is a way for them. We tell them like, okay, you want to solve these problems, and we're so proud of you for that, but you have to take care of yourself first. So thank you for listening and for participating. I hope you'll remember this practice and use it again, and maybe offer it to the students or learners that you work with. Okay, so now I will pass it over to Sean, who will talk a little bit about, very briefly about AFS and what to expect next.
Thanks, Saskia. It's always such a nice treat to begin a meeting like that because you get to kind of leave all of the stresses and worries of the day aside and really be present in the moment. So I'm already feeling more bubbly and joyful. So thank you for that. So my name is Sean Riley, and as Saskia mentioned before, I'm the Director of Program Development at AFS Intercultural Programs. I'm dialing in this morning from New York City, and it's a pleasure to be here. So AFS is a global voluntary nonprofit organization that's been around since 1914. And we've been developing global citizens and providing intercultural learning opportunities in a variety of different ways for over 100 years now. So the way that we work is we have a network of 59 national organizations that host programs in 60 countries, but we reach over 100 countries through non-traditional and virtual exchange programs as well. So quite a broad reach. Um, we work to achieve our mission of creating a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world through three impact goals. So, developing active global citizens to take action in their communities and around the world, globalizing schools, teachers, and institutions to deliver effective intercultural learning programs that lead to global competence, and also by expanding access to intercultural education. So, offering scholarships, expanding community outreach, and being as inclusive as possible to learners in all different kinds of situations and in all different kinds of communities. So when we think about the topic of education and emergencies in particular, um, one way that we're really trying to activate on this work is by offering scholarship programs in STEM, sustainability, and social impact. And we have a commitment to reserve a minimum of 20% of those scholarship spots for students or learners who come from displaced communities, who identify as refugees, or who are experiencing some kind of disruption to their education. And we also equip teachers to better support learners who are coming to classroom environments, whether in person or in the virtual space, and just to be more inclusive and more aware of different resources. We can't do this well without the amazing partnerships that we have. So, you know, Girls Toward Leadership, Teach for All, and other really great partnerships are essential in order for us to be able to reach these communities well and to be able to support as wide an audience as we possibly can. So one of the things I wrote down, Saskia, was gratitude for these kinds of partnerships and relationships. And so we'll talk a little bit more about specific commitments and ways that we have been trying to activate in the space more specifically through the discussion. But I'd like to turn it over now to our guest speakers. So I would just ask if you could please introduce yourself, your organization, and the work you do in this space in particular. And then if you'd like to share a little bit about how you got involved in this space as well, that would be great. So maybe I'll hand it to Marcelina first.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean, and thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Marcelina Amin. I'm the founder and president of Cultural Leadership Organization, and I'm a student of political science. I am a senior, and I minor in media studies. So basically, Goals Toward Leadership, it's a nonprofit and non-governmental organization that helps empowering Afghan girls through capacity building programs, through providing education opportunities and advocacy for girls' rights. How I started this, it was 2020 when the COVID pandemic was there, and I was also a teenager in Afghanistan that I newly finished my high school and was trying to prepare for university. However, when the COVID-19 started, everything stopped. Like it wasn't only for Afghanistan, but it was for all over the world. Like people could not access education, could not access to very basic things, could not go outside. And this situation, like I was kind of like busy with studying books and preparing myself at home. But then I was seeing my friends and my peers who were really struggling with the situation. They had a very bad mental conditions because they did not have access to things, and they did not know what to do. And then because I started working in community and activism and volunteer working and stuff in the community, I had a network of people with myself that who could work with me. And I came up with the idea of, what if I use this network and come up with an idea to have some online sessions to help with the mental health of Afghan girls. So we started from there to help with them to kind of share the resources that I had, or my network or my connections had, to help with Afghan girls so they could kind of cope with the situation that they were facing during the pandemic. So it started from there, and it kind of like it continued like that for a year, and we had programs, and we could continue with online programs. And then after a bit of time, we started some applying for projects, and the very first project that we implemented was the grant from UN Women, and we implemented in-person programs. And from there, we started registering it as a nonprofit organization, and we really made an impact, and we really had a lot of people joining our programs, and being their lives were impacted through the programs that G2L had. So it continued like that till the unfortunate takeover of the Taliban, and then we had to again stop having in-person programs and then continue with virtual programs. I have a team of 20 and above 20 people from all over the world. Like majority of the countries, like majority of them are in Afghanistan, and we all are working toward the same mission to empower Afghan girls through the programs that we are having.
Thanks, Marcelina. And I think we'll have some more curiosity to double click on. But thank you for being here and for the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And Katie, if we could have you please introduce yourself as well, your organization, the work you're doing in this space, and if you'd like to share a little bit about your journey into this space, that would be great.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. Just want to say thank you for the invitation, for being with you all today. It's such an honor, and sharing a stage with you, Marcelina. It's such an inspiring story you just shared, so I can't wait to hear more. My name's Katie Noble. I'm the Head of Education and Emergencies at the Teach for All network. Maybe I'll just start with the last bit of your question, Sean, how I got involved in this type of work. Back in 2009, I feel quite old now, I became a teacher. I was a teacher in a London secondary school where I taught for 4 years. I taught sociology, psychology, and citizenship. And I did this through the Teach First graduate scheme. So Teach First is the UK partner of the Teach for All network. And so I'm what you would call an alumni of the network. And while I was teaching in London, I came across a statistic that I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back, it really changed the trajectory of my life. And that statistic was 1 in 4 of the world's school-aged children are in countries affected by crisis. And so I knew right there in that moment that I wanted to build up a useful skill set that could support other educators around the world in their fight for education equity. So I left the classroom after 4 years. I spent the next decade in the EIE sector, humanitarian education, supporting teachers and schools impacted by emergencies, mostly working for 2 organisations, UNICEF and Save the Children. I lived and worked over that decade in a range of places, from South Sudan to Iraq, Bangladesh, Gaza, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, and a few other places. I currently live in beautiful Palestine, although today it's actually quite wet and cold, so it's not very beautiful. And since 2020, I've worked at the Teach for All network. And so the Teach for All network, it's a network of over 60, I think at the minute we're 63, but I'll just say over 60, independent, locally led organisations, and they all have a shared purpose. And that shared purpose is to develop this collective leadership to ensure that all children can fulfil their potential and that all students can shape a better future. I'll just quickly talk about what we mean by collective leadership, because it can sometimes feel a bit abstract. And I'll just share why I think it's so deeply needed. And so I think everyone in this webinar today would agree that at this moment in history, humanity faces some big existential challenges, from climate change, growing inequality, violent conflicts, dramatic economic change, everything that Saskia shared in the introduction. And I think we would all also agree that the models of education systems in each of our countries were built around very narrow attainment of knowledge and narrow attainment of skills, which is completely insufficient to prepare students to navigate these existential challenges. I think of my child, she's only 3, but I think these challenges that she's got to go and face in the future, the education system she's in right now is not preparing her for that. And so at Teach for All, we are this network of organisations who are really trying to change the paradigm of teaching and learning, really trying to make sure that education develops students to be leaders who can solve these challenges. And we do this through, all of the 60 partners do this through the same method. So the network partners, they all call on their country's top leaders, their country's most talented, most creative young people, people who might not usually go into teaching. Maybe they are on their career paths to becoming lawyers or engineers or business people. And our network partners ask those people to dedicate 2 years of their life to go and teach in their country's most underserved or high need communities. And they receive this kind of intensive boot camp style, pre-service, in-service training. They get leadership coaching, mentoring. I'm having flashbacks now from me doing it in 2009, but it is a truly transformative experience at all levels. So the impact we see at schools, they get this injection of a different type of teacher. It's transformative for teachers who, living in these communities, they're seeing firsthand the deep-rooted inequities that these communities face. And the magic is the long-term theory of change. It's the alumni piece. So like myself, an alumni, over 70% of the alumni chain stay in this fight. They stay in this work. They don't become the doctors, the lawyers, the business people that they were planning to be. And they become veteran teachers, policymakers. They work at the ministry. They go on to start their own organizations. And this is where we infuse change makers across the whole ecosystem who are really driving this change. So yeah, I get really excited when I'm asked about what Teach for All does, because on the surface, by the name, you might think it's putting teachers into classrooms, but it's actually about building this like human capital pipeline of people who are trying to change the system, which is hard.
That's an understatement for sure. Thank you, Katie. And I think hearing about your journey into this space also touches on a lot of I think there are a lot of shared passions, interests, and experiences from participants who've joined the session. I wanted to just kind of make a quick note around language, because all 3 of our organizations, although we have some overlap in audiences, I know we talk slightly differently about who we're serving and what we're trying to do. So just want to make it clear for folks on the call that we might use the terms learner, student, participant kind of interchangeably, but by no means are we trying to limit folks into a specific box. I don't want to forget the educators and the teachers who are also part of our stakeholder group. And even more broadly than that, when we talk about refugees, displaced persons, or communities who are affected by global crisis, we're again also not trying to prescribe people into any one box. We always think it's best for folks to self-identify and, really lead with compassion and let them define their story and their journey for themselves. And you reminded us of that, Katie, too, so thank you. And then just a quick reminder, so we will have some time for direct questions at the end. So I see someone raising their hand, but we can actually just take questions at the end. And if you do have questions in the meantime, please feel free to use the Q&A function or pop those into the chat and we'll make sure they get answered. And Saskia, back over to you.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Katie and Marcelina, for those introductions. The themes of this conversation are so like life-giving, and I feel like a lot of what we've been talking about during this International Education Week is how to work outside of the system because the system's not working. So yeah, empowerment, leadership, transformation. We want to hear more about that. So let's start with understanding, like setting the stage, understanding the impact of crisis. From your perspectives, how do emergencies and crises disrupt education and training? And what are the most immediate challenges that your organizations face in this regard? Go ahead, Marcelina.
Okay, it was me. Okay, thank you so much. So emergencies and crises, I think they are different in different countries. But in our case in Afghanistan, the Taliban's takeover, the second takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan in 2021, was a big challenge and crisis for the education, specifically of education of girls and women, and overall the rights and human rights of women and girls specifically. So when the Taliban took over the country, so many girls and women, Afghan women and girls, they do not have, since that time, they do not have access to their very basic rights. They cannot get an education. They cannot go to schools. They cannot go to university. They cannot work outside. They cannot participate in sports and so many other things that they do not have any access to. So these are the big challenges that Afghan women and girls are facing. And in our organization, the immediate challenges that we are facing after that, like we started having online programs because Afghan girls, they do not have access to education, they cannot go to school, and we have been trying our best to first help them with their mental health because girls all being confined at home, like not being able to do anything. So this is a very critical situation that they are living in currently. We have been trying to have mental health sessions, and besides that, we have been trying to have sessions to help them prepare for college, like outside, to apply for scholarships outside, although there are not a lot of chances for them to go outside, like because the Taliban have their restrictions and they do not give them the right to go outside without a male chaperone. So it's kind of hard, but still our girls have been hopeful and they have been trying to apply for scholarships. And we have tried our best to kind of train them and help them to apply for those scholarships and to be hopeful and to work on applications and everything. And the challenges that we have been facing so far in providing those opportunities and providing those programs for Afghan girls, they have been mainly that it's not only about the rights of Afghan girls, it's also about other stuff in the country after the takeover of the Taliban when they took over the country, the dire economic situation in Afghanistan. It really impacted the lives of everybody, not only Afghan girls. So when we are trying to have online programs for them, it's really hard to ensure that they are able to access those programs that we are providing or other people are providing online for them because they do not have proper internet connection. They do not have the money to pay for their internet connection so they can be part of online programs. So it's really hard. Like besides that they do not have access to digital platforms, to digital tools to access these programs. Like the majority of our participants, we have faced a lot of such situations that our participants did not have a phone or a proper internet connection to join our programs, although we have been providing those programs, but no computer, no tablet, no internet, no proper internet. So they all have been challenges for our organizations to continue providing these opportunities for Afghan girls. And at the same time, like considering all these challenges, there has also been a big challenge of mental health for them, that they are facing all those things inside the country from the Taliban, and then these economic things that they are not able to join programs, and even like not having a lot of opportunities to study, like even if when it comes to online programs, like there are a number of organizations providing education for Afghan girls, but it's not like a lot of them doing this thing. And it kind of like girls are losing their motivation, like they think that they do not have a future, while even if they participate in programs, or even if there are not a lot of opportunities for them to be part of. And yeah, these are kind of the challenges that our organization, Girls Through Leadership, has been facing immediately after the crisis of the Taliban, when they took over the country.
Thank you so much, Marcelina. That's a lot to take in, and it's extremely heartbreaking. And I remember from a panel that you facilitated yourself that I was so shocked that the focus turned to the lack of access to sports.
Yeah.
Right? Like we were talking about education, but sports became such an important thing that they were missing. And that, of course, is connected to mental health. So thank you for sharing all of that. Katie, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, echo all that you've just shared, Marcelina. When I think of that question, I think of it in three buckets, and Marcelina shared so beautifully about two of them. So crises disrupt access to learning, it disrupts the learning process, the ability to learn, and then mental health and well-being. And I think a statistic that always shocks me, I heard it a few weeks ago around access, and this is just a recent, in the last 2 years, since January 2022 and June 2024, there was an estimated 404 million students that faced school closures only due to weather. So we're not talking about Ukraine, Palestine, Lebanon, Afghanistan, just due to weather events. And so 81 countries shut their doors in their schools due to flooding, storms, and heat waves. And I think this is particularly shocking because, as all of us know, as educators, if you are out of school for more than 1 year, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to return. So crises have a huge impact on school dropout. And I wanted to share, just thinking about access, one of our partners who's doing incredible work related to access is Teach for Palestine. They just launched their organization last year, and they're currently placing incredible teachers all across the West Bank. And as some of you on this call might know, the West Bank, there are extremely tight movement restrictions. There's Israeli military operations happening all the time. There's settler violence happening daily. And this disrupts all aspects of daily life, including access to education. And so there's over 800,000 students across the West Bank who find it really difficult to get to school due to checkpoints, military patrols. And although Teach for Palestine aren't yet working in Gaza, I think we can't be doing a panel like this without talking about the situation in Gaza, where over 660,000 school-aged children have lost an entire year of schooling. They should be in classrooms today learning geography, maths, history, but instead they're learning how to survive. And so for me, access is a big issue. The second one is quality of learning. And so during a crisis, I think we're all a bit familiar with neuroscience, but if a brain does not feel safe, and if a brain doesn't feel loved, a brain cannot learn. And that's just science. We can't argue with it. That's evolution. It's in our DNA. And so you can imagine in an emergency, there's all this turmoil, chaos, distractions, traumatic experiences. A child's brain can't create these new neural connections. That is what's needed when we're learning. And so, and apart from neuroscience, there's overcrowded classrooms, students have lost their exams or their exam certificates, the textbooks maybe have been destroyed or lost, and they're finding themselves in kind of multi-grade, so lots of different ages, or multilingual classrooms. And all of this put together has a real impact on learning. And from our network, this makes me think about Ukraine, Teach for Ukraine. I wanted to talk about Ukraine because yesterday was 1,000 days since Russia invaded Ukraine. an incredibly depressing milestone, and Teach for Ukraine have been working tirelessly over these 1,000 days, which is actually, it's 3 academic years. And they have been taking their lessons in bomb shelters. The lessons are continuously interrupted by air raid sirens. And of course, teachers are having to find really creative solutions to make sure that students don't fall behind. But I think some of you might have seen, and it's hardly surprising, the PISA results in 2022. PISA is the Programme for International Student Assessments, and they assess 15-year-olds on mathematics, reading and science. They do this every 3 years in 80 countries. The PISA results in 2022 for Ukraine confirmed that the ongoing war has indeed made it very hard to learn. In reading, Ukrainian students were 38 points lower than the last assessment in 2018, and they are on average 2.5 years behind their peers in other countries. And so learning outcomes, it's not just about being in schools, but also the learning that takes place. And then just as Mussolina shared, the impact that crises have on mental health and well-being. It's an extremely overwhelming experience, extremely stressful for students and teachers. And it's a completely normal reaction for you to experience mental health disorders, anxiety, sadness, hopelessness, fatigue, irritability, anger, post-traumatic stress disorder. These are completely normal reactions to being in an abnormal situation. And teachers, they are the frontline responders. They have to go above and beyond to try and support their own well-being and their students. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, the 3 impacts.
Thank you, Katie. I would also just quickly, I would even expand on the last point you just made. It's teachers, but also administrators and professionals like ourselves and like many others joining the call. In fact, one of our guest panelists and a dear partner of ours, Dina Alma-Saeed from Spark, was meant to join this call, but she's actually based in the West Bank. And unfortunately, her reality as a professional is also disrupted, and she's not able to be with us on the call today. But I just wanted to quickly shout out, like, these aren't hypothetical examples. They're very real. We see that they're very real, and they are impacting not just learners and teachers, but also the staff who are working in these spaces to try to support those audiences. So I appreciate you highlighting that.
Thank you. Thank you all. Yes, Spark is definitely an important partner for us and working hard towards all of these many issues that you've both mentioned. And so this is like the moment. We've heard about all these heavy statistics. This is the moment for a deep breath. And now, yes, we're going to move on to, now we want to hear, what are your organizations doing to respond to these crises? What are your target audiences? Maybe you could share a story or two. And what are the first steps you take towards assisting, towards helping?
Yeah, sure. My organization, as I mentioned, Girls Toward Leadership, is empowering Afghan girls through providing educational opportunities, providing capacity building programs and advocacy for girls' rights. We mainly are having our programs on leadership skills. We started with that to have leadership skills for Afghan girls because, we really see the impact and the importance of working on girls' leadership skills because it not only affects them but also affects their societies and their communities. When they have leadership skills, they not only are able to lead their own lives well, but also their peers and also the communities that they're living, their families and their generations. So overall, it's really important for us, for a team, to help with the leadership skills of Afghan girls. And we also are helping with mentorship programs for Afghan girls, either if it's for mental health, either if it's for development, for their professional growth and everything. We anything, like basically anything that helps with capacity building of Afghan girls or girls in our and our audience, we are trying to do that. And we currently are having, after the takeover of the Taliban, we initiated a campaign, which is the skill sharing campaign, the global skill sharing campaign for Afghan girls. So it mainly aims at connecting experts, or those people who have knowledge on a topic, with Afghan girls, and setting up the classes and everything for them to share their knowledge, for the experts to share their knowledge in whatever it is that helps with Afghan girls to help with Afghan girls to learn that topic. And we recently had like research program that a person who was expert of doing research and everything, he came and shared every step that's being done in a research, in a formal research, or how girls can do research and how they can publish it and everything. Like we also have had programs on how to apply for scholarships, how to it contained how to write letters, like motivation letters, how to complete the applications, how they can access those opportunities, and interview tips, and so many things that are involved in this. So basically anything that helps with learning of Afghan girls, we are trying to do that. And specifically when it comes to our campaign, like we welcome everybody, like even people who are part of this program, we call on you to come and support Afghan girls, because any small act is really helping with Afghan girls while they're in a current situation. So the audience that we have are basically Afghan girls aged 14 to 25 currently, and they are majorly in Afghanistan because they don't have access to education. And we also give spots for girls who are outside Afghanistan, specifically in the countries that are like the situation of migrants and refugees are not that good. For example, in Pakistan, we see that their situation of Afghan girls in Pakistan, in Iran, for example, sometimes in Turkey, they do not have a lot of access to education because maybe based on their background that they're a refugee and they do not have like a legal status in the country. So we have seen a lot of cases like that they have not been able to enroll in university and schools because they are not legally residents of the country. So we are providing opportunities for those people as well, but mainly we are working with Afghan girls to help them get educated. It's not like we are doing a formal education, but we are trying our best to help with some sessions that are helping them with their lives, like goal setting, like mentorship, like leadership skills, like not a formal education, but a supplement education. And let me check. Did I miss anything from your question?
No, that was fantastic. And we've had many reactions from the audience about all the efforts you're doing. And you said that this is not formal education, but again, you are forced to work outside of the system. So I think what you're doing is incredible and extremely courageous.
Thank you.
Yeah. Katie, please.
I just keep seeing hearts popping up while Musselina's talking. I love it on Zoom. I think I'd like to share, Saskia, about how we at Teachable equip our colleagues around the world to work in these types of contexts. Because there's good news on this, because there's so much that can be done to support colleagues. You don't have to be a technical expert, but maybe I'll just share now 5 practical bits of advice. And I always share these 5 bits of advice with the CEOs of our network partners, because it's really important that this is modeled from the top down. You know, we need our CEOs, we need our team leaders modeling this so that it trickles down. Firstly, it's important to understand how grief shows up in the workplace and how grief can show up in your teams. And it's important to make sure that all your teams feel that their grief is being appropriately acknowledged, that they're given space to discuss, they're given space to process what's going on. And if this doesn't happen, and I've seen this not happen in a lot of contexts, staff can feel isolated, they can feel misunderstood, they don't have this kind of culture where they can express their grief. And so we really encourage people to set up like support groups, solidarity spaces, having dedicated time in meetings to having open discussions about this, and really sharing openly and honestly about how it's impacting people personally. So that's the first piece of advice. The second piece is around making sure you don't inadvertently expect your staff to compartmentalize the grief when they're showing up to work, making sure they're not expected to seem professional. This is clearly unrealistic. It's insensitive. People who work in emergencies, there's a lot of secondary and vicarious trauma. And so just sharing with your team and your colleagues that it's okay to not be okay and to model this, I think is really important. Thirdly, I would say everyone should just look out for colleagues who are not on top of their game. Maybe they're starting to miss deadlines. Maybe they're calling in sick. Maybe they seem like withdrawn, or they're just like, there's been a drop in their enthusiasm, and really making sure that you're adjusting your kind of expectations for their performance during this time. And then fourthly, I would say really implement flexible policies on annual leave, working from home, being as flexible as you can. And then fifth, if you can provide any sort of access to counselling or mental health, that really goes a long way. And so those are kind of practical things that can be done on like an organisational level. And I would say this is just from like what I've personally found helpful in my mindset shift when I've worked in all these different emergencies. I have found it helpful to firstly shift my mindset from I feel alone to I feel part of a larger whole. And so even on this call today, there's over 40 of us. We're not alone in this work. Even in this call, like we're part of a community. So that's a helpful shift. Also to shift your mindset from I'm really struggling to see what is right beyond, because emergencies now are protracted. Like emergencies do not go away after a few weeks. And so it's really helpful to shift your mindset to think, this is a long game, this is a marathon. And so that's kind of a bit of a perspective shift. And then the third shift I find helpful is thinking like, I don't have a voice, or other people's voices are better placed to influence things. And actually, I have a perspective and I know I can drive change. And just by having those three small shifts in my own head has helped me kind of navigate burnout and work in this sector for a long time.
Yeah, I think this is a labor of love. And because it's we're in it for the long game, it has to come from a place of love and compassion. And maybe, Sean, you could mention briefly about how AFS trains our facilitators to work with participants in crises.
Yeah, I think, Katie, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, so you touched on a lot of really great examples for equipping staff and educators too. I think it can extend, being able to look out for those kind of unspoken signs, or being more aware of what folks might be going through and extending compassion to them. And I think there's also a nice bridge between how the facilitators or educators can also extend that to students, right? So not making any immediate assumptions, kind of being more aware or mindful of, what's beneath the iceberg, right? Like what can't we see? And something that we've worked hard to do for our program facilitators, at least, is provide them with compassionate facilitation skills, which we co-developed with Spark, so that they're not only experts in delivering the program content itself, but they're also really enhancing facilitation and teaching skills by being able to be more aware and mindful of the human side and what's going on outside of the session, or what baggage might a learner be bringing in that we just wouldn't know about otherwise.
Yes, and so Katie, you've already gone into this with your answers, which is fantastic. But I know we're short on time, so I'd like the audience to hear a bit from you both about what advice might you offer for tangible ways to make learning communities more inclusive. Are there cross collaboration ideas you can share, partnerships, or any calls to action for all of our colleagues that are here today?
Well, thank you. This is a great question. Well, for us, for the education of Afghan girls, there's a lot of important things that needs to be kept in mind, like when working for communities, like for Afghans, like for people who are like in similar backgrounds, like Afghan girls facing such emergencies, like their government is not letting them to get an education. For us, the most important thing, like right now, we Afghan girls and the situation of Afghan women and girls, it's not a hot topic anymore. And it kind of really, it's heartbreaking that there are not a lot of people thinking about Afghan girls and their education and their rights. So what really helps us from you, from AFS or other people who are here, it's really important for us when you talk about us, when you raise awareness about our issues, about our situation, it really helps us because not a lot of people know about our situation. Not a lot of people know that there is a corner of the world that the people in the country are in a very bad situation mentally and economically, specifically girls and rights, like girls and women, they do not have access to their very basic rights. So we would really appreciate if you talk about us, if you raise awareness about the situation that we have. And what other call to actions that we have are like raising awareness and volunteering for programs, like volunteering with our organization. We are also a volunteer organization helping with this. So if you come up and come to us and volunteer with our organization to help support with Afghan girls, that would be an amazing act from you, and that would be really helpful for us. And another thing that I would be, I think that it would be really helpful is sharing resources with Afghan girls and people who are in such situation in emergencies and crises. So sharing resources with each other and people who are in such situations, raising awareness about their situations, and volunteering to help with them in your spare times or whatever you can do. Like you can contact organizations like us and to ask if there is anything. Like every small act would be really appreciated and would be making a big impact. So I don't want to take a lot of time because we don't have that much, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcelina. Katie, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Okay, my final call to action. What would it be? I think it is for all educators out there in the world to just make their learning environments inclusive. And this doesn't have to be super technical. It's just great teaching. I say just, but and there's 4 simple ways I think that they can do this. So the first one is around doing the work on themselves. So as educators, get a deep understanding of what your students are carrying in their backpacks. So they are coming into your classroom with backpacks of trauma from home. Maybe they're not displaced, maybe they are displaced, but really understand, like, what are they navigating? Do they have practical issues like they have a food shortage or they don't have documentation? Are they trying to navigate a new country, a new culture, a new language? Are they grieving? Have they lost loved ones? Are they being perceived as an outsider? Are they being bullied? Are they feeling overwhelmed? So firstly, like, do the work on yourself, like educate yourself, understand about their culture, celebrate their different milestones in their different calendars. Secondly, to make classrooms more inclusive is all about language. So really looking at trying to translate key documents, giving out to parents letters in their language. AI is everywhere. Google Translate, it's possible. It's really simple and free. Putting welcome notes and school rules in their language, making sure you're pronouncing their name correctly if they're from a different country. The third piece of advice is around making sure their basic needs are met. If they are transitioning to a new country, making sure they have a uniform or stationery, or they have a bus pass. If they need halal food, for example, changing the school menu, taking them for a walk around the local area so that they don't feel scared about the new neighborhood. And then the fourth way is around building trusting relationships, like strong connections. So giving them a focal point, giving them a buddy system, having a weekly check-in with them, meeting the new parents for coffee, having a translator there. These things can just go such a long way in making someone feel welcome and making sure that they can learn.
Thank you, Katie. These are all very practical strategies that we can consider, we can think about, and I'm sure the audience, you can all connect with Marcelina and Katie on LinkedIn, and if you have questions about more resources, we'd be happy to share. Thank you, Katie, for sharing that in the chat. And I do see that, sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I wanted to just add briefly to that. These are great tips and resources, and just one small thing I'd like to add, and this is also answering one of the questions we received in the Q&A. We do see a lot of, students who have been displaced or who are fleeing crisis have trouble accessing documents. So one sort of call to action or something we encourage partner organizations to do is to really think critically about documents that you ask for in program applications or for certification. Do you actually really need that document, or is there a way to be more inclusive of students who might not be able to access those, or in some cases their school might have been bombed or doesn't exist anymore, right? So just really encouraging institutions to think practically about what are they asking students or applicants to come to the table with, and do we really need that to ensure that they're the best candidate or whatever the case might be, or can we be a little bit more flexible and really work with individuals where they're at?
Yeah, thank you. So Katie and Marcelina have shared some links in the chat, and we will also follow up with an email with these links and more information. So let me share my screen again. So as a recognition of your attendance here, you will receive a badge. And as my colleagues, Linda and Andresa mentioned in their session this week, here's the badge. But now what? What are you going to do? This is great that you attended and you care about the topic, but what is your next step? How are you going to contribute to this discussion, to these issues in a meaningful way? And Katie and Marcelina have both given us some great ideas. So thank you for that. Sometimes we feel like we want to help, but we don't know how. So you'll receive instructions for how to share your badge. And we still have other sessions coming up. We have Empowering Global Leaders about the AFS Youth Assembly. We have a session later today at 2 p.m., the Experiential Edge, Fostering Intercultural Competence Through Facilitation, which is, we talked a lot about facilitation and educators today. So if you're interested to learn more, please join us. And finally, on Friday, we'll have a session on global families and insights from the host family experience from AFS. So these are more of our virtual offerings and resources. We will share these resources with you as well via email. And this is just a very small list, limited list of what is actually offered through AFS. So please take a look and let us know if you have questions. And yes, thank you all for joining us. If you have comments or questions, you can reach us at ve.learn@afs.org. And please take a moment to fill out this feedback survey. We'd love to hear what you thought of the session, and if there's anything you wanted to hear more about, and if this is something you want to hear about in the future. So your feedback is really valuable to us. So thank you all for joining. Thanks for your thoughtful participation and questions. And thank you to Katie and Marcelina for your extremely valuable insights on this topic. And I wish we had 3 more hours to talk. An hour is definitely not enough. But we're so honored to have you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and it was really enjoyable to hear from Kitty and you, the AFS, and having all these participants and their questions. I've been seeing their questions, and I will try to answer them. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.